The Ethiopian Bible is the oldest Bible. The oldest copy of the Ethiopian Bible, which is full in terms of a Genesis to Revelation copy, is 14th century.
You're doing a very similar thing that you were doing with the Passion of the Christ, where this is a profound story.
Yes.
When you put something like that together, how do you choose who's going to be the next Jesus?
You use him again.
Caviezel.
For centuries, one version of the Bible has remained largely unknown outside the mountains of Ethiopia. While most Christians are familiar with a collection of 66 books, Ethiopia preserved dozens of ancient writings that tell a far more expansive story. Now, growing interest from figures like Mel Gibson is drawing attention to texts that explore forgotten mysteries, hidden histories, and a side of Jesus few people have ever encountered. What exactly has been hiding in plain sight all this time? Ethiopia's hidden Bible and the books the West left behind. For years, Mel Gibson has shown a fascination with the earliest layers of Christian history. Whether through his films or public discussions about faith, he has often focused on uncovering details that many believe have been softened, simplified, or forgotten over time. That search for deeper answers has led many researchers, historians, and curious believers to look beyond the familiar biblical canon and toward one of Christianity's oldest surviving traditions, Ethiopia. Unlike most Christian communities around the world,
priests and lay worshippers in Ethiopia are on a mission to replicate or even recreate centuries-old religious manuscripts and sacred artwork.
The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church follows a biblical canon containing 81 books. That number alone raises an obvious question. If most people grew up with a Bible containing 66 books, where did the additional texts come from, and why have so few people heard about them? Part of the answer lies in Ethiopia's remarkable isolation. Protected by rugged mountains and a unique historical path, the region preserved religious traditions that developed largely outside the influence of the Roman Church. While Christianity was evolving throughout Europe and the Mediterranean world, Ethiopian monks were carefully copying and safeguarding texts that had been passed down for generations. The significance of this preservation became even more striking in 2010. Carbon dating tests performed on the famous Garima Gospels revealed that portions of these manuscripts dated between 330 and 650 AD. These findings placed them among the oldest surviving illustrated Christian manuscripts ever discovered. Long before many of Europe's most famous biblical texts were produced, these ancient books were already being read and protected in the Ethiopian highlands. The Garima Gospels demonstrated Ethiopia's deep and ancient Christian heritage, but their significance goes beyond age alone. They reflect a tradition that preserved a broader collection of sacred writings than most Christian communities.
And the Christian material, depending on how one counts, is, I believe, the 5th largest in North America.
While other regions narrowed their biblical canon over time, Ethiopia retained texts like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and Maccabean, which continue to hold spiritual and historical importance within Ethiopian Christianity today. This larger canon presents a version of Christianity that feels broader, more mysterious, and in some ways closer to the spiritual world described by ancient believers. Instead of a streamlined collection of texts, it preserves stories, teachings, and traditions that many other branches of Christianity left behind centuries ago. But among all of these additional books, one stands above the rest. It is a text so influential that it reshapes the backstory of humanity itself, introducing powerful celestial beings, forbidden knowledge, and a conflict that, according to its pages, changed the course of history long before the story of Jesus ever began. The forbidden stories that changed the story of Jesus. Among the additional books preserved within Ethiopia's ancient Christian tradition, none has generated more fascination or debate than the Book of Enoch. While Enoch appears only briefly in the Book of Genesis, Ethiopian Christianity preserves a much larger account that expands his story dramatically. For centuries, this text remained largely unknown to many Western Christians, yet it offers a striking explanation for some of the Bible's most mysterious passages.
Like most other religious works, Zena Selassie is written in Ge'ez. This dead language remains the language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
According to the Book of Enoch, a group of heavenly beings known as the Watchers abandoned their appointed place and descended to earth. Their actions set off a chain of events that transformed the world. The text describes these beings sharing knowledge that humanity was not meant to possess, including teachings related to warfare, various crafts, and other hidden practices. Their influence, combined with the appearance of the Nephilim, figures often associated with giants in biblical tradition, is presented as one of the major causes of corruption before the Great Flood. Whether viewed as literal history, symbolic literature, or ancient religious tradition, the story dramatically expands the backdrop of the biblical narrative. It introduces a world where the boundary between the human and spiritual realms appears far thinner than many modern readers imagine. What makes the Book of Enoch even more intriguing is its connection to early Christianity. Portions of the New Testament, particularly the Epistle of Jude, contain references that closely resemble passages found in Enoch. Several early Christian writers also treated the book with significant respect. Yet over time it disappeared from most biblical canons while remaining fully preserved in Ethiopia. The result is a version of biblical history that feels far more cosmic in scope. Instead of focusing solely on human events, it presents a larger struggle involving heavenly powers, rebellion, judgment, and redemption. In that context, the arrival of Jesus takes on an even greater significance. But the surprises do not end there. Another tradition associated with Ethiopian Christianity explores a period of Jesus' life that receives very little attention in the New Testament, his childhood. While the familiar Gospels provide only brief glimpses into those early years, later writings preserve stories that attempt to fill the gap. These accounts portray a young Jesus displaying extraordinary power long before his public ministry began. For many readers, these stories raise difficult questions. For others, they offer a glimpse into how early believers understood the identity of Christ. Either way, they reveal a side of the story that most people have never encountered, and one that challenges many modern assumptions about who Jesus was from the very beginning. The Ark, the missing history, and a different view of Christ. Beyond its larger collection of sacred texts, Ethiopia preserves another tradition that has captured global attention for generations. At the center of that tradition is one of history's most legendary religious artifacts, the Ark of the Covenant. While many people know the Ark only through biblical accounts, Ethiopian tradition maintains that it was brought to the country centuries ago and has been protected ever since. According to the Kebra Nagast, a revered Ethiopian text, the Ark arrived through Menelik I, who is traditionally described as the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Although historians continue to debate the story, its importance within Ethiopian culture cannot be overstated. For millions of believers, it forms a vital link between ancient Israel, Ethiopia, and the Christian faith itself. The artifact is believed to be housed in the city of Aksum, where a single guardian is entrusted with watching over it for life. Whether one accepts the claim or views it as a powerful national tradition, the story helps explain why Ethiopia's religious heritage developed differently from much of the Christian world. In Ethiopia, biblical history is not viewed as a distant series of events. It is woven directly into the nation's identity. This perspective also influences how many Ethiopian Christians view Jesus. Rather than seeing the Old and New Testaments as separate chapters, they view them as part of one continuous story, stretching across generations. The additional books preserved in their canon provide a broader framework that connects ancient prophecies, spiritual traditions, and the life of Christ. At the same time, Ethiopia's expanded biblical collection raises an uncomfortable historical question. If these writings survived for centuries, why did they disappear from most other Christian traditions? Part of the answer lies in how the biblical canon was formed. While many writings were excluded as Christianity became standardized, Ethiopia's unique history and relative isolation helped preserve several ancient texts that disappeared from common use elsewhere. What ultimately emerges from the Ethiopian tradition is a picture of Jesus that feels both larger and more mysterious than many people expect. Instead of appearing only as a teacher within a specific moment in history, he is presented within a much broader story, one that stretches from ancient patriarchs and forgotten writings to heavenly conflicts and long-preserved traditions. Whether these texts represent sacred truth, historical records, or centuries-old religious interpretations, they force us to confront a fascinating possibility. Perhaps the biggest difference between the Ethiopian Bible and the version familiar to most of the world is not the number of books it contains. Perhaps it is the scale of the story itself. Because when those additional writings are placed back into the conversation, Jesus no longer appears as a figure standing at the center of a single chapter of history. He becomes part of a narrative that spans generations, kingdoms, and what believers have long understood as a struggle reaching far beyond the visible world. And that leaves one final question. Did the Ethiopian Church preserve a forgotten piece of Christianity's earliest heritage? Or does its ancient canon simply remind us how much of the past still remains beyond our understanding? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed exploring this fascinating chapter of history, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and check out our next video for more untold stories.